I wanted to share some techniques I used to make the Predator, as well as mistakes I made and what I learned along the way. Hopefully, seeing my process will help you streamline your own. First thing is I always work with studio lighting on. It shows the true color and makes it easier to see. Surface snapping spray paint works well, but I personally don't use it very often. For the dots, I grabbed the circle or this dice and transformed it into a pill shape. I adjusted the opacity to between 70 to 90% and shook my hand while spraying, dipping in and out of the sculpture's surface. You can vary the size as you move along to give it some dimension. Here's a fundamental workflow mistake I made. I painted the whole thing black and then went over it with yellow. Two reasons why I won't be doing this again. One, the line between black and yellow requires more precision to get crisp. The second is, if I need to adjust the shape's position, the paint doesn't move with it because the paint is essentially an invisible colored shape. I recommend you always sculpt in the color you want. Not only will the lines be crisp with less painting, but you can adjust the position without affecting the paint job. Texture shading is done with black at about 90% opacity and very low soft blend. Any shape works, but I find the square and the wedge work best to get into the cracks of your sculpt to make them stand out. Re-gripping a shape makes it easier to handle and allows you to press into the sculpt. Just be aware of the other side. If it's thin and you don't want to paint the other side, then you can use Surface Snap. Here I'm using the clone tool with Live Clone checked on. This makes a clone that reflects the original. With preferences set to minimal, you can scope in and see both without the blurriness. This allows you to view changes from different perspectives without adjusting the camera. Here I used an on and off switch to toggle a keyframe of the mouth being opened. I use this for the hands being clenched as well. You can see my stretchy paint tutorial for how to do the membrane. Here I double click the head to select all, then select the head to deselect it. Now I can hide the hair to make sure the back of the head is painted correctly, and do the opposite to find that I missed a spot. Hiding things smartly allows me to see the rigging of the hair easier. Here I'm showing the values I used for each layer of the hair. All layers had lock rotation on so they don't spin in place. The mid layer has a bit of strength, but too much strength made it look like his hair was in slow motion when his head moved. If you select each connector, the detail panel that you open will affect all of them at once, and you can adjust them live with the play button to see how they move. Here I use a thin wedge and the smear option to carve blemishes in the armor. If you change the color to the multi option, it will carve and color randomly at the same time. This is to show how I painted the fishnet. I used a thin wedge or a flattened circle at 70 to 90% opacity. Regripping at the closest grip allows for really fine control. I've added shapes here with varying looseness to show how the same line can look crisp and blurred depending. This was an issue when painting the fishnet because the lines looked straight when they were on a looser surface, but later when I increased the detail, it showed where I wasn't accurate. To avoid this issue, and probably the most important thing I learned, is to max out the detail of your sculpture before painting. It makes all the shapes within the sculpture the same looseness, and can always be loosened after painting is finished with the looseness tool. The looseness tool and the details tool are essentially the same thing. You can use the looseness tool within the sculpt to make individual shapes sharper, or you can use the details tool to change the looseness of all the shapes within the sculpture at once. I show this here by maxing out the sculpt's detail. It evened out the loosened parts so everything is now uniform. I then attempt to use the looseness tool and you can see there's no change. And that's it. I had a lot of fun making this. Hope you learned something useful, and I'll see you in the Dreamverse.